So as you can see from the title and the thumbnail, I'm reacting to another one of the Card Creative's videos. No. Oh boy, here we go again. Jeez. Now, before we get started today, I just wanted to clear up a couple of things. It's based primarily on some of the comments I've received over my previous reaction of North Borders video, Card Creative video. And it's that why I'm doing these videos, okay? So I think there's a little bit of confusion out there. I just want to clear things up. The primary reason why I have this channel at all is to share some of my experiences with you. Now, I come from probably a slightly different background than some of you who learn photography through YouTube and social media, okay? When I started, we didn't have that. Call it old school, call it what you want. I'm fine with that. But nevertheless, you cannot ignore that I come from a slightly different background, place in terms of learning photography. So obviously, I will have different opinions about photography. And these opinions are, in the grand scheme of things, neither right or wrong, but ultimately, what I aim to provide the viewer, you, is a choice, the option to hear something different, maybe a different problem, a different solution at solving some problems. Because what I see on social media, especially YouTube, is primarily people tend to latch on to a technique, an approach to something, and everyone does it. Because, say, for example, presets, CPL filters, the way they do retouching on an image, it seems to be trendy. And I didn't have the benefit of YouTube and social media when I started photography and learned through my career. So I had different approaches to it, different solutions to those problems. And I'm just sharing that. Again, it's not right or wrong, but hopefully I can give you a different opinion and you can decide whether you like it or not. And you can choose if it jives with you or not. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. The other thing is, when I critique or review other people, it's not the people, it's the work. No different than someone leaving a restaurant review about the food or a hotel review about the bed, okay? It's not the people, it's the work. So I think there might be a little bit of confusion, and I understand that because photography is kind of a personal thing. So you might think that when I'm being a bit harsh on someone's work, that I'm attacking them at the same time. It's not. And I learned this difference throughout my entire career because when I first started, I felt just like you. When I first got critiqued by other people, instructors at my school, clients, when they had the time to actually give you honest reviews, they tore my work apart. And I took it personally, right? But I later learned, after getting thicker skin, that there is a very big difference between someone criticizing your work versus someone criticizing your character or your personality. Very different things. So just wanted to make that clear. And shall we get started with Alex's video?
In today's video, I'm going to walk you guys through how I took this photo and transformed it into this photo.
And from what I see, very briefly, looks great. I'll dig into the details a bit later.
Starting right from the top here, let's talk about the settings of this shot. You can see that I had a shutter speed of 1/400. My aperture was at 3.5 and my ISO was at 640, shot on a 35mm lens that has the ability to go down to f1.8.
1/400th of a second, I guess that's okay. 3.5 aperture, I understand that. I think he wants to blur out the foreground of one of the Porsche's interiors so that the attention and the focus goes to the other Porsche in the background. So 3.5 is fine. Shooting wide open may be a little bit too blurry for his taste. So he stopped down a little bit to get 3.5. ISO 640, I would say that's generally a bit high for my taste, because at that level, you're going to get some noise. I haven't seen really a camera that is noise-free at ISO 640. So that's something to contend with. Can you shoot at a lower shutter speed, like a slower shutter speed, maybe 1/25th of a second, so you can lower the ISO down and get a cleaner image? Probably, I would do that. But let's leave that for now. But that's my initial thoughts about his camera settings.
Really, the only intentional setting here is that I knew that I wanted to shoot through this window to capture this Porsche, but I wanted to have some details still remaining in the Porsche on the interior. You can also see that I captured it so that the highlights were still exposed, and in the dark areas, they're not. And if you're shooting in RAW, you know that you can get these details back, which I'm going to show you how to do.
I like the framing. It's basically a window frame and then an outside frame of the image. So a frame within a frame. It's not really a cliche yet, but it's very popular nowadays in the past couple of years, where people are doing this with car photography. It's an interesting look because you're framing something different. You can put anything within the window frame or the door frame, and then you have another frame of your image to frame that, so to speak. So interesting. In this case, he's got the benefit of having two cars there, so he might as well do it. Exposure-wise, what I see, visually exposure, seems to be pretty good. Here's the thing, the foreground Porsche interior is really dark. I understand where he's coming from, because there's also a highlight off of the hood and the windscreen of the background Porsche. And I think he's exposing he pretty much nailed the exposure from what I see here, because you don't want to blow out your highlights. They're kind of a priority when you're exposing on the camera versus the shadows, which have a bit more flexibility. You can really only recover maybe around 2 stops of highlight before things get blown out. But shadows, you can recover up to 3, 4, 4.5 stops, I think, for most cameras. So when exposing in camera, expose for the highlights, don't make the highlights middle gray, like 18% gray, too dark. That's too dark. But expose them so that they're not too blown out. And then you have your shadows are not too dark, so you can still recover them. That's only if you don't have any other lighting to work with and you're only shooting in natural light, which is this case. So again, exposure, pretty well. Even though it looks visually dark, I think that's all you really can do at this point.
First things first, we're going to start by cropping our image. The Porsche isn't perfectly centered, so we're going to try our best to get that centered. Now, one thing you'll see later is that we do have some details on the badging of the seat here that we're going to try and bring back, so I want to keep that detail in.
I usually crop at the very last stage. I retouch the entire image, and there's a reason for that. I let the clients crop the image, so I have to retouch every single pixel from the raw file without cropping, so they have the most flexibility in terms of cropping when I deliver the files to them, because I don't know how they're going to use those images, so I have to give them as many pixels as possible so they can crop whatever way they want. If I pre-crop the image like he's doing now, I'm basically telling the client, this is the way it's supposed to be. You have no choice in cropping. That's not a great service in my opinion, but that's only if you're working for clients. In this case, I'm not sure if this is a job for Porsche or not, or is it a personal shoot. If it's a personal shoot, I guess he has complete freedom to do any cropping he wishes, and he can choose to do his cropping earlier like he is now, without having to worry about anyone else needing a different type of crop, when the image is done. So it just became a habit for me to just do all my cropping at the very end and have the retouching of the entire image and then crop later on.
And then from here, we're just going to up the exposure. I want to grab back some of the details in the seat, knowing that, of course, if I bring down the highlights here, we're still going to be able to bring back the details on that Porsche. So we're going to sit about there. Looks pretty good to me. Shadows we're going to bring up, and for this I'm looking at the details in the grille of the Porsche. As well, I'm looking at the interior of the seats of the Porsche. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. When it comes to whites, you can hold Option to make sure that you're not peeking out or blowing out any of your whites, but I think it's sitting in a pretty good spot. Blacks, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hold Option and drag this down until you can see where the black parts are going away. That means we're losing detail in those parts of the car. So I want to make sure I'm maximizing my dynamic range. So we're going to sit about there. So you can see down here, we're losing details. We can see in the grille, we're losing a bit of details, but that's okay. We're just trying to get a really natural contrast while maximizing dynamic range.
Yep, so far it looks pretty good. What he's doing with the highlights and the shadows seems fine. Global adjustments, he's not worrying about any particular detail in the car yet, I think. He's trying to get some, shadow detail back from the dark interior in the foreground. And he's playing with the highlights reflecting off the hood, which is fine. The weather is perfect. The lighting is really good. I mean, you can really just tell from the reflections off the shiny surface of the car that there is no clouds in the sky, and it's just a very clean gradient lighting, gradient reflections. So all good.
The tone curve. So I'm going to make a point at the top third of the tone curve. I want to soften up the highlights a little bit, and I might even drag the top down on the highlights there to make sure that we're not peaking or crushing any highlights there.
Okay, so the 2 points he's touching on the curve is the whites and the highlights. The whites is the brightest points in the image. The highlights are the slightly darker highlights than the whites, okay? And as he goes further down the curve, it affects the darker areas of the image. So I think he's just trying to prevent any highlights from blowing out at this point by adjusting the brightest parts. I usually try to leave the whites alone because if you expose the image properly without clipping the highlights, you don't really have to touch that part of the image. It's only when you're either a bit too dark or a bit too bright. If you're a bit too bright, you really, like I said earlier, you only have about 1 or 2 stops to work with. So if you blow out your highlights beyond that point, you can't recover your highlights. They're gone.
Now, I love pulling up the mids when it comes to automotive photography because this is typically where the car is going to sit. So I tend to either bring this back to middle or even pop that mid-tone up a little bit. Then in the bottom third, we're going to bring back contrast to taste.
Okay, so he's boosting the midtones because he claims that that's where the cars usually sit. It depends on the color of the car, doesn't it? Because if it's a black car, for example, or a white car, there's no midtones there, right? It's either shadows or highlights. So I think it's maybe a little bit too generalized of an adjustment to fix all cars, all colors. He's shooting a gray car, a dark gray car. So I guess it does fall into the darker part of the mid-tone spectrum. So I guess you can get away with it. But I won't be saying the same thing for a white car, for example, because you might need to make a different type of adjustment for that.
My objective is always to maximize dynamic range and make the subject stand out. Our eyes are always drawn to light, so it's going to be our goal to make sure that we are drawn to this Porsche with our eyes. The first thing that people see is that Porsche in the middle of the window.
Interesting what he just said, and I agree with it. Your eyes naturally gravitate towards the brighter parts of the image first before you look at anything else. So in this case, trying to make a dark gray Porsche brighter so that your eyes naturally go towards it. I mean, there's a limit there because it is a dark gray Porsche. So how bright can you make it? And I think what he's doing now is probably the limit. Any brighter is not going to look correct, accurate anymore. But there's 2 other parts of the image that are, I think, drawing my attention to. One is the side view mirror. There's a reflection in it that's quite bright, and I think it's the door handle of the foreground Porsche reflecting off the side view mirror, and that's just hitting the sun in the right angle where it's reflecting quite bright. So I would probably get rid of that. I would try to see things like this in camera so I can just make a quick fix in camera. It's still probably a quick fix in Lightroom. You can just use GenFill and get rid of it quite easily, I think. But even easier is to just fix it in camera. And what I would usually do is just adjust the angle of the mirror, the side mirror, so that you don't see the car door handle anymore. That's my quick fix. And that goes along with anything else reflecting off that mirror that's behind the foreground 911, okay? The other bright point is the kind of triangle where the two mountains kind of meet in the background. That's the sky, obviously. I think I would probably try to fill that in with GenFill. I mean, you can't do anything in camera because it's a distant mountain. I mean, what can you do? So this is something you have to do in post-production. I would probably fill it in because it's, I wouldn't darken it because it's the sky. How natural would it look if it was dark? So I would either just get rid of it, or maybe the other option is to make it bigger, right? But right now it's just a small little white kind of area that's neither here nor there. It's just throwing me off a little bit, but that's a very personal opinion for me. It doesn't really make or break the image.
I'm actually going to use one of my fall presets, but not an entire preset, not presets how you're used to seeing them. I'm actually just going to pull the fall colors out of my fall preset. So we're going to hit fall 3 there.
Presets. Look over here for my video about presets. I guess I won't have to really comment on it in this video, other than to say that I think the image looks really good, looking natural, right? Natural, clean lighting. Keep it that way. If you're going to use a preset, it's easy to go overboard. It's very easy, and it'll look unnatural at that point. So you got to be really careful. When you hit the preset button, it probably gives you the maximum effect of that particular preset. Dial it back, or just don't use a preset at all, and just fine tune everything. Very subtle changes is what an image like this needs. Anything drastic will just make it look really sci-fi. It completely changes the look of the image. And it really depends on your intention. But if your intent is to make it a natural looking image, it's just fine tuning sliders here and there. Oh, and by the way, is everyone using Lightroom now? Let me know in the comments, because I see more and more videos of people just retouching in Lightroom. And there's no Photoshop. Like, do people even use Photoshop anymore? I know Lightroom's come a long way, and it's got a lot of advanced features now, but so has Photoshop. So I just wanted to know if people just find is Lightroom all they need? Is it good enough for everything that you require? Or do you still sometimes do Lightroom first and then bring that image into Photoshop for things that Lightroom cannot do? Let me know.
Now, if you come down to the color mixer, this is where you're going to get a lot of that fall look. Is if you can see, this yellow tab is pulled very far to the left, and I actually don't like it that far, so we're going to bring it back. But if you're really looking for fall colors, moving this yellow and this green is going to get you most of that fall warmth that you're looking for. And that's about all we're doing there. This is affecting some of the blues, which isn't really affecting too much of this photo, maybe in the depths here.
Yeah, I won't do too much with the colors at this point until you start selectively masking certain objects in the scene, because whatever he's doing now with each color is affecting all the colors in the entire image. And he's trying to isolate things here and there, but it won't, because these sliders in particular affect the entire image. Once you mask something and then apply the sliders, you can really control the color of each object in the image. So there's a purpose for doing it globally, because it's more natural, because it affects everything. But there's a balancing act. There's a certain amount you do it globally, and then a certain amount you do selectively. So yeah, in this case, I probably won't do too much, because it will start to look a bit unnatural, at least in my view. Again, I think the purpose of a shot like this is to look natural. So the foliage tree color looks a little bit off to me at this point. Let's see how it goes in the end.
Coming down to the color grading, you can see that I have in my shadows, I tend to put 220. My mids, I just use a luminance boost because again, that's typically where the car is sitting, but no colors are adjusted there. In the highlights, I have 35, so it's a warmth in the highlights with a saturation of 10.
So this is the second time I've seen him do this, where he's got I guess it's kind of a preset of the colors in his shadows and the colors in his midtones and the colors in his highlights. I don't know why he's needing to make it a preset, because every image is different. And if you apply the same adjustment to different types of images, it's going to look different. So there's really no point. And if you tell me that, well, this is his signature, it's not. I don't think it is. You can't rely on something like numeric values or a certain color in a shadow or midtones or highlights as part of your signature. It's got nothing to do with that. The signature is more about the emotional feelings that are attached to an image. That's way more apparent. No one's going to see these minute technical changes, even though you might think that they add up over, when you consider a collection of small micro adjustments. It's still technical. I honestly don't think that this is what makes a photographer unique, is the way you make some sort of numeric change in color. I mean, does that mean you can't shoot in black and white because there's no color there? So what are you going to do? You can't apply these principles. So it's nothing really to do about that. I think that he may just have this in his mind, that something that he likes, and he's just always applying it to whatever he shoots. But I would, say that it doesn't always work with every single image. It might work for the first time you worked on an image, but you can't assume that it's going to work with any other image that you shoot under different lighting, different conditions.
So for me, I love to just kind of keep the sharpening where it is. We're going to hold Option on your keyboard and we're going to drag up the masking. So if you hold Option, drag up the masking, you're going to see that everything that is white is being sharpened. Everything that is black is no longer being sharpened. So if you do not add masking, that means that you're sharpening everything, every part of your image.
Yeah, that's I guess how I would do it too. I talked about sharpening in the first reaction of the Car Creators video, the one I did previously, where there's 3 stages, so you can watch it there in the corner. Basically pre-sharpening, sharpening, and then output sharpening. So I won't get into that here.
I will add grain to the end of my image because I kind of like the look of just like slightly more natural than overly digital.
Grain is, I guess, theoretically good. I think he's correct in saying that it removes a little bit of the digitalness of an image. But in my experience, the difference is so small. Unless you're really pixel peeping, you can't really see it. The general viewer of that image will probably never even notice that. Oh, wow, look at that grain. It's so nice. They're not going to see that.
That's going to bring up your radial filter. So you got a circle here. Now I want to bring up some of the details on the headrest here because that's where the Porsche badge is, and that is a spec option, I believe. So I'm just going to bring that out so that you can see that we're shooting through a Porsche at a Porsche, which is kind of mind-blowing if you think about it. Here's the before and after. You can see it's there. I think that looks okay. Maybe we can expand this so it doesn't look so pointed or like intentional. I don't know. We want to hide that that's an edit more than make it show off. Okay, so there we go.
So that round mask that he used, which he changed into an oval, is probably a little bit too crude for my taste. I would have just used a brush and painted in using that auto kind of edge detection feature. It's a click box. I forgot the exact name for it, but just use a brush. It's more accurate. With this oval, even though it's got a gradient on it, it's also affecting the B pillar, some parts of the background, and I don't see the difference, but that is making a difference. So I would just probably avoid any potential mistakes there. But it looks fine. Visually, it looks fine.
If you guys are into presets, I have created presets where if you come down into my toolkit, I have a car curve that's already created. And if you click that, it's going to find the subject and add an already natural car curve on it. But I'm going to show you guys how I use that. So let's select that mask, and it didn't do a perfect job. So we're going to subtract using a brush on here, and we're just going to remove this stuff here.
Yeah. So again, presets, it's got a subject detection feature built into this preset, which finds the car or finds the person or whatever. But, whatever works for Alex shouldn't work for you, right? Alex is a unique individual, unique artist. You're a totally different, unique individual. So, using the same preset makes you more like him when you should be exploring your own path, your own unique ways. So, yeah, this is just my general view about presets in overall. It's not the person making them, again, it's just presets in general. It's just, I don't get it. I really don't get it. You may think it's a beginner tool, but why would a beginner, what's the point of a beginner learning a habit that they need to unlearn as they advance in the craft? Why not just start not using presets in the first place?
Now, what I'm going to do first is we're going to click on the mask, and I'm going to use the tone curve to add exposure. I don't want to blow out the hood of the car, so I want to keep the details there. We're going to add that pop back into the middle to make sure that it's shining. It's looking good there. And maybe even bring up some of the details in the shadows here. And let's see if we just bring the highlights down. Man, the highlights are crazy in this. How much moving the highlights actually adjust that car. So we're gonna be really sensitive with those highlights there, and then add contrast to make sure everything's looking good. Sweet, a little bit of an exposure bump, and that car is looking really, really good.
So I don't know why he's doing this again after masking the car. He already did it before he masked it, boosting the midtones, and now he's boosting them again with the mask. I mean, again, visually, it doesn't look bad. So I would probably just leave it alone when it's a global adjustment. Don't even touch it as a global, and just change it after masking.
So Nolan, who was on this shoot, who set up this shoot for Porsche Center Calgary, showed me a really cool trick. So we're going to take a radial gradient.
No.
And we're actually going to pull it over the sky here.
No. And
we're going to create what looks like the sun.
No. Oh boy, here we go again. Jeez.
So we're going to start by adding exposure. I'm going to add warmth to make it look like the sun. We're going to add some saturation. And then down here, we're actually going to lower the clarity a ton. And we're going to lower the dehaze so it actually looks like the sun is kind of bursting through in a really natural way.
Stop it right there. Well, at least we know where he got this trick from, right? Because he says that some guy he knows working at, I think, a dealership in Calgary, Alberta, a Porsche dealership, taught him this trick. So if you watch my first video about, the car creative retouching someone else's work, he did the same thing, and I was like, wow, So at least we know where it came from, and he's not like he's doing it again in this image, because he did this video first, like I said earlier, and then he did the other one. So this is where it started, and I just wanted to point out that I get a lot of comments from people who tell me that they're not really impressed by a lot of posts on Instagram from car brands, okay? They say that they look amateurish and the retouching is terrible, and it's just not good photography. Their words, okay, not mine, okay? I just get these messages. But Exhibit A is right here. Apparently, someone at a Porsche dealership who works there, probably in their social media department, and I guess a lot of dealers have their own in-house social media departments and photographers nowadays, shared this trick with Alex, and now Alex is using it. Up until this point, it turned a really good image, into something that just kind of butchered, to be honest. I'll say it again. When you just add a sun in post-production, when the sun was not really in the shot to begin with, you are basically adding the light source without adding anything else that the light source affects. So in this case, you can see that, well, he just added a glow in the sky, and that's basically the sun. And then what about what the sun's hitting? Well, it's going to hit the car, and it's going to have little specular highlights all over the car. Like in this shot I'm showing you here, where I shot also a Porsche. Same angle too. It's just that this one's a roller, and this is the real sun in the shot, and you can see how the sun is sparkling off the back end of the car, and you can see how the sun is lighting up the ground, and you can see that it's creating a hard shadow in front of the car. So all of that is missing in Alex's photo here. So you can try to paint that all in post-production after you add that fake sun, but it's a lot of work. Personally, I wouldn't even bother. Just make sure the sun's in the shot. Just time it a little bit better, or figure out in Google Maps or use a sun tracking software to find out where the sun's going to be at a certain point of the day. But to add it in post-production without adding in all these other things, it's like fake. Just, I guess I've just said it again. So that's, yeah, it's something, like I said in the other video, I did this when I started photography too, but like when you have the real sun, it does so much, it changes so much to the image that you just can't add a glow in the sky and call it a day. No pun intended, but there's so much more that goes on to a shot. So, if you look at this, Taycan image, there is so much going on that one sun creates that you have to consider when you just add it in post. So don't even bother adding something like that in post. I feel quite strongly about this. So, I'm not really beating him hard about this, but it's just my passion for this subject in particular, talking. All right, let's go on.
Now, denoise is a super powerful tool that we have in Lightroom now, and you can see it's going to make a drastic difference in the shadowy areas here. It's really going to soften that up and take out a lot of that digital noise that we get when we're using those maybe low exposure values in the shadows, and we want to bring those up.
I agree that Lightroom's AI denoising is a remarkable tool. I've used it myself, and I could not believe how good the results are. But I think that if he exposed it better in the beginning, he would not even require this, because if I looked at the beginning of the video and I see a clip of him hand holding the camera as he's taking the shot. Now, I don't know the full context of this, okay? Maybe he's just posing as a B-roll for this video and he's just holding the camera pretending to shoot, or was that actually the way he shot this shot? I don't know, right? Maybe Alex, you can tell me. But if you use the tripod and set it down, then you can just lower the ISO, keep the aperture at 3.5, use whatever slow shutter speed that you want, and get rid of the noise because you're shooting at ISO 100. That's number one. And to figure out the entire dynamic range, since you're on a tripod, you can bracket the a whole series of images, exposures, and you can get all the darkest shadows to the brightest highlights all nicely exposed. That solves your problems, and then you just blend it together in Photoshop later on. Everything else is too bright, but we like this area, so we just use this area, and then we match it up with maybe the wheels in this shot, and then we just pick the best parts from every shot and then combine it. Yep. Okay. But there's always one shot that is like the base, that has most of the shot that is in the good, the right brightness, which is this one. So most of the car is well lit, except for maybe this area that's too dark. And so you will pick from the other. Pick from the bright one. Yeah. So tripod would save the day without having to resort to, noise reduction in post, even though this noise reduction works really well. So, but again, hey, I'm old school, remember? So I like doing things in camera. But again, the choice is yours. I'm just offering an option here. So overall, I really like the image, minus the fake sun. God, I wish if that sun was gone, even better, right? The weather amazing, lighting amazing, the framing's really cool. One other thing that I would have just taken out and be aware of is some of the stuff touching the car, right? There's some bushes above the side view mirror in the background that are kind of touching the car. There's a road sign that's sticking out of the car that could, probably doesn't need to be there. He removed the plate. Great sign. That's good. Just everything around the car. It's always good to just take a look around the car when you're shooting in camera. So if you can remove those things in camera, like live on set, that's the first choice. If you can't, because it's like a road sign stuck on the ground that you can't remove, then do it in post. But that's the way I usually think. If you can just get rid of it in camera, it takes 2 seconds, do it in camera. And then if it's impossible, do it in post. That's the way I usually go about whether I choose to do something in camera or do something in post. Post is last resort if you can't do anything in camera. And that's it. But overall, good image. I like it. This is way better than the other video that I did because primarily, obviously, he was retouching someone else's shot, which was shot a different way. Let's be nice, okay? And this is his own photography, so way better. And of course, hey, I love Porsches. That doesn't hurt. So thanks for watching. If you can, please subscribe and please inquire me or email me if you're interested in my membership program starting soon. All right, see you next time.